Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another session, Europe Talks to Europe, in collaborative, the Fabula, Lector in Fabula Festival in collaboration with WOJCIECH. This is an interesting panel, the debate or discussion, which title is Without Words. How do we debate? And of course, you may recognize some of the panelists already. This is about cartoons that we just spoke about in previous session. The importance of pictures and pictures with words, how this interacts and how it makes the European public sphere. In fact, Thierry VISSOL, who is sitting in the very middle, is in a sense a curator of this session. So we agreed that Thierry will introduce to you our excellent guests.
I think there is no translation.
Oh.
It's gone. She's gone.
And since, yes, this is without word session, without translation session. We can, I guess Italian will be good for a moment, but just maybe we wait just a moment.
Or you, while I'll present you, ask to Filippo if she can come back.
Mm-hmm. We were...
Well, ok, posso provare di farlo. Vabbè, quindi l'idea era di parlare dell'importanza della vignetta satirica nel dibattito politico e nella costruzione di una consapevolezza della politica e dei temi principali della politica usando un mezzo più o meno senza parole. E quindi abbiamo qua tre grandi vignettisti. Comincio con NIELS BOJESEN, who is Danish, and he is working for, as a freelance for Jyllands-Posten, which was the newspaper who published some years ago the cartoons. Sorry, stop, ricomincio. Quindi è danese, NIELS BOJESEN, lavora per il giornale Jyllands-Posten, che è il giornale che ha pubblicato le vignette di Mahomet. E quando l'hanno fatto, hanno chiesto, la redazione di Jyllands-Posten ha chiesto a tutti i vignettisti danesi di partecipare. Solo 12 l'hanno fatto e NIELS ha rifiutato di farlo e forse spiegherà il perché. Lui è vignettista, ma è anche illustratore e scrive anche o illustra dei libri per bambini. FABIO MAGNASCIUTTI, che probabilmente conoscete perché è abbastanza presente sul web, è anche lui vignettista e illustratore, uno dei pochi che vive del suo arte, vero? Più o meno. Vive del suo arte. Sì. Bene, bene, perché sembri in buona forma. Anche lui è vignettista e illustratore e lavora per varie testate, principalmente per il magazine Left, ma anche per l'Inus, per il Fatto Quotidiano, per la Repubblica, eccetera. E poi Marco TONUS, che apprezzo anche molto perché ha vinto l'anno scorso il concorso che ho creato di vignette sul tema europeo. Anche lui è un vignettista, principalmente illustratore, e preferisce che dico che lavora principalmente per un sito che si chiama Valigia Blu, che è un sito di fact-checking e di approfondimento dei vari tipi, diciamo, di problemi societali. E quindi ridò la parola a WOJCIECH, che voglio ringraziare perché lui ha fatto una performance durante questo festival, era più o meno dappertutto e deve scappare per ritornare in Polonia. So, the ball is in your camp.
Yeah, as we have, think, no translation yet. But let me ask the first question. The cartoonists themselves, yourselves, do you have your political views?
Allora faccio la traslazione. Voi vignettisti avete un'opinione politica precisa. Cominciamo da chi?
Yeah.
Niels.
Niels.
Yes, thank you. I do believe we have our political views, but I don't believe they're party political. I believe we have a sense of, I don't know, decency or direction more than just party political standpoints. I think we are more like the man on the street, and I sincerely mean that we are supposed to be the man on the street more than speaking for a party or a political direction.
Quindi faccio una breve traduzione. Niels dice che lui non ha un'opinione politica precisa, ha piuttosto una sensibilità politica, cioè qualcosa che ha chiamato in inglese decenza, cioè che è piuttosto ancora una volta una sensibilità ai temi politici e alla reazione che potrebbe avere un cittadino in questo genere di dibattiti, diciamo.
Buonasera, io sono d'accordo con Bobbo in tutto ciò che ha detto. Vorrei sottolineare che, almeno per quello che mi riguarda, avere una posizione precisa politica in Italia, o almeno avere un punto di riferimento politico preciso in Italia, è piuttosto difficile, almeno per me, almeno ora. Credo in passato di averne avuti, probabilmente, anche se non ho mai avuto una tessera, non lo dico in termini dispregiativi, però non ho mai avuto un vero e proprio partito di riferimento. Naturalmente credo di potermi collocare senz'altro a sinistra, se ancora ha un senso questa parola, ma diciamo di volta in volta tendo a valutare il tema del momento. Senz'altro ogni volta mi convinco probabilmente di qualcosa, insomma, poi se questo vada a convergere da qualche parte oppure no, è tutto da vedere, però senz'altro sì, abbiamo delle convinzioni politiche, credo di poter parlare per tutti, ma almeno per quello che mi riguarda sono piuttosto fluttuanti. Ecco,
sì, ma lavori per left, che non vuol dire destra.
No, infatti stavo dicendo proprio questo, sì, io lavoro per Left, che è un giornale espressamente di sinistra. Lo sono anch'io, non credo che sia poi così importante dichiararsi al di fuori del proprio lavoro, almeno per quello che mi riguarda. Di volta in volta, ogni volta che produco un'illustrazione oppure una vignetta, lì finisce il mio mondo in quel momento, cioè non sento la necessità di collocarla necessariamente da qualche parte. Dopodiché è evidente che ho sempre comunque lavorato per testate che in qualche modo abbracciano convinzioni che anch'io abbraccio, ecco, questo senz'altro. Sì.
Marco?
Grazie, buonasera a tutti. No, io non sono iscritto a nessun partito. Se calcoliamo, ho avuto la tessera del Milan nel 93, Milan Calcio, ma era 93. Ero anche stato indotto da uno zio, dopo l'ho stracciata, quindi ufficialmente è stato un periodo di transizione. Comunque no, chiaramente ogni autore, credo, di satira abbia una sua posizione rispetto alla società, rispetto alla politica, però credo anche che questo tipo di analisi che facciamo quando disegniamo ti porti ad essere comunque sempre molto critico, anche perché metti davanti, diciamo, la risata o comunque la riflessione anche rispetto alle persone che magari hanno idee come le tue, perché è un esercizio di critica e anche di autocritica.
Want to wait for translation?
This is a crucial moment in this debate, as we are getting soon a direct translation.
Per quanto ho potuto capire, considerando il mio italiano inesistente, mi chiedevo E lei stava menzionando questa cosa, questa opposizione al potere. È obbligatorio per un cartoonist essere in opposizione al potere, al governo? Oppure forse avete altri esempi personali? Come vi definite? Siete in costante opposizione o forse vorrei fare un'altra domanda. Usando il buon senso comune, ci si chiede cos'è questo, dove porterà questo? Sembra un qualcosa di sensibile, è giustificabile. Quindi farsi questa domanda penso che sia la cosa migliore sempre, cioè relazionarsi con il mondo che si ha intorno. As far as I am concerned, it is not so necessary to be defined as something on the opposition. I don't feel the need to have such a label of opponent. Clearly, as far as I am concerned, if you make satire, you tend to be opposed to something. Generally, you oppose what is identified as the power. And so it's a destiny for you to be at the opposition, but it doesn't mean that this should be a religion. One might even agree or disagree. It happens very seldom to me to agree. Sì, ma è successo. Penso che ne abbiamo parlato, è successo che stava disegnando in sostegno di una causa politica una volta o due, vero? Well, as a trend, I apologize, I'm very selfish in that I draw and write essentially for me, for myself, primarily, and then I experience that everything goes towards a given direction. Maybe I haven't got the sense, the meaning of your question, but I imagine you meant this. I don't know whether you were referring to something particular. Sì, abbiamo fatto prima una conversazione. Io ho fatto questa domanda prima di questo incontro, cioè se state impegnati in qualche partito politico. No, I've never been part of a political party, but I received some requests for sketches and images I had already drawn as a support for a campaign or a project. And I analyzed what they were submitting me each time, and on a couple of occasions I said yes, I agreed, it seemed to be worthwhile doing. As for some particular electoral campaigns, I knew the person and the project. They were asking me. So I thought it was worthwhile doing. I don't mean that I would do it apart from the political party involved. Of course, it was easy for me in that case because it was a person I knew. I knew his political origins and intentions. But I must admit that sometimes I'm a bit shy in allowing my works and images to a party. I'm always been afraid of flags, so to say. May I read something he wrote for me on satire? And you wrote, satire doesn't change the world, but can indicate some directions. It might suggest alternative assumptions and side views, or it might simply make people laugh and smile. That's a good starting point. I design satire as everything that a lethal version, which is played, written, not necessarily connected with news or a specific topic. It is a state, a condition, and a filter. We're a filter between the reality and the others. So it's a bit against the fact that you work for yourself first. I just wanted to add something considering the question you asked, the main question you asked. Satire, or anyway, sketches, cartoons, like so many types of art, such as cinema, for example. There is satire, and there are different types of applications. For example, there is engaged cinema, light cinema, adventure cinema, and so on. There are so many ways to follow this path, and among them, to make a practical example, when we see debates on these topics, well, people against it tell you, well, you make a partisan satire. Well, of course, that's my personal point of view. I am partisan. Well, maybe it could be harmonized with the point of view of other people, but sometimes it doesn't harmonize. Okay, it does not correspond to other people's point of view. And then there is another aspect which is rather peculiar. Many people associate freedom of satire with diffuse, a widespread freedom. I would like to mention that even in countries where formally there is no freedom, there is regime satire. Where is the difference? Well, in my opinion, the difference relies in the fact that if I am free to attack everybody at that moment, everybody that bores me or annoys me for a declaration or gesture, I'm free to do that. I'm in a free country. If, on the contrary, satire is only addressed towards the enemies of my country, it is not a free satire. It's a form of satire, but it is an induced form of satire. It's propaganda. That's the huge difference that is characteristic, because some people could be purchased, could be sold. Your choice is to say, I want to do that and not to do that. And maybe you can tell us something about your experience. So if you are requested to make some drawings, you can even refuse because it clashes against your values, maybe. And we form our values individually. I remember that in Stalin's Russia, for example, there was a big satiric magazine, Crocodile, which was issued weekly, but it only made satire against the Western world. One of the things that cracked the wall was the spreading of underground humorism, simply a joke meant to put the system into a crisis. So I think there is some energy in this field, but as all types of energy, there are people who try to shape that energy according to his own interests or tastes. E ha detto che lei segue il suo buon senso, senso comune, o cerca di seguirlo, ed è questa è un'ispirazione, l'ispirazione per i vostri disegni viene da qualche parte, quindi sarebbe interessante per quelli che non disegnano in maniera regolare comprendere come, dove disegnate. Forse leggete un giornale oppure guardate la televisione e giungete alla conclusione, beh, questo lo devo disegnare, oppure forse disegnate e poi buttate via i vostri disegni, via via, e alla fine dite, beh, forse questo è più vicino all'idea che avevo da dire. Qual è il processo? Come giungete all'immagine finale che poi mostrate nelle vostre vignette? Per me è generalmente la materia che trovo importante, interessante, talvolta può essere anche sciocca, è una piccola cosa nella società. Per cortesia potete dire all'oratore di togliersi la cuffia perché ho il ritorno della mia voce, non posso tradurre.
Sorry?
You've got to remove your headphones, please, otherwise I cannot translate.
Sorry, I just lost.
So you were saying that it's a little thing sometimes that inspires.
Quindi talvolta sta dicendo che sono piccole cose, anche sciocche, che mi ispirano.
Imagination or
Cioè trucchi dell'immaginazione o un argomento che ritengo importante, generalmente questo, oppure qualcosa di divertente. Vedo un lato divertente nelle cose, quindi inizio a disegnare, ad abbozzare, quindi per me talvolta è cercare di trasferire nell'immagine tutto quello che non voglio dire a parole. E quindi mettere anche dei valori contraddittori all'interno di una vignetta. E come disegna? Very fast. Well, normally I find my inspiration.
A volte magari un argomento mi colpisce particolarmente e parto dal senso di quell'argomento, altre volte invece vengo rapito da un fattore puramente estetico.
By an aesthetic factor, an aesthetic element, something I like formally, and around that element I try to build a little story which doesn't need too many words. That's what I decide later on if I need words or not. So sometimes the illustration, the drawing works as it is. It should already convey what it has to convey. And sometimes I feel the need of adding some captions, some texts. This has nothing to do with a topic or another. It's just my personal feeling. Normally I start from the image. For sure.
No, io contrariamente ai miei amici.
Opposite to my friends.
Sono nel tempo, devo dire, sono cambiato.
Over time, I have changed. Once I was more instinctive, according to some news. I took my inspiration. It was something automatic for me to make something. And then over the time, my approach has changed because the way of making satire has changed, and also the way how the images are perceived. I mean, we are surrounded by social networks where everybody can produce satire. And in my opinion, this is also good, because the more we have, the better it is. I would be afraid if we didn't have it. But there is a surplus in production sometimes due to material which is not good in its quality, because in the haste of doing something you risk to be very approximate and superficial. So what annoys me in this work is to be superficial, approximated. So my approach has changed, and I meditate a bit more. I leave the flow of words passing by after some news, and then later on I tell my opinion. And then saying something is a thing that you can even review after some time, and it still has got a value because you have reflected, meditated before doing it. I make a comparison sometimes. To make an example, as you know, after the massacre of Charlie Hebdo, a sort of, in my opinion, a sort of rush to a tribute was created. So we must make a tribute because many artists have died, sectors such as cartoons and other fields of images, storytelling. And maybe it was not so clear what this magazine was, Charlie Hebdo. But in that situation, everybody wanted to tell his or her own opinion on that. Out of my personal experience, I was contacted by several newspapers and magazines, and at the very first moment, and the two Quasci brothers were still running away, were still escaping, and a newspaper called me, and they told me, make a sketch on this. Well, how can I draw something on an event which is still taking place? Maybe you can ask me to be sarcastic. Well, it could be done, but personally, I was really touched, closely touched by that event as a drawer and a reader of that magazine. So that's our power sometimes, that is to say no as well. Later on, I did something after a few days. I preferred that those news, well, I wanted to understand how the story was going to end, and I wanted this event going completely inside me in order to give a rather well-balanced opinion of mine on this event. But they're all different approaches. What scares me is that sometimes superficiality can be around the corner. I'd like to go on this thread, the way how you are working. You have all worked or are still working for the press, for newspapers and magazines every day. How does it work? Are you the ones who can choose the topic you want to deal with, or could it be a request by the chief editor or a journalist? They just tell you, I want a drawing on this or that. How does it work? Well, as far as I am concerned, in both ways. There are some newspapers for which I freely produce whatever I like. I am free to deal with the topic I like at the moment. Lately, I am mainly dealing with migrants because it is something that touches me deeply, and I'm focusing my attention onto this topic and all the things surrounding this. And then Linus, the magazine Linus, sends me 1 or 2 or 3 articles that have to be published with different topics, and I build the image or the drawing on the article, but in complete freedom. I'm completely free. I have been working for l'Unità and political newspapers, but as far as I am concerned, I have never received any suggestions or orders such as do this type of drawing, even regarding concepts. I have never received specific requests in this sense. I'd like to get back to what Marco was saying as regards Charlie Hebdo. Well, in those days, as many of us, we received lots of requests by many newspapers and magazines. At least 10 of them called me in those days. And in a couple of cases, I accepted. But then I had the same problem you faced, because I was encouraged by the fact that I knew I wouldn't do anything sarcastic or satirical for that topic. I just made some drawings. They were not the celebration of something, not only emotional. They were just an expression, emotional expression of what I felt at the moment. They were more connected to pain than a denunciation or Je suis Charlie Hebdo. And then eventually we were also a bit bored of being all Charlie Hebdo. It turned out to be a sort of joke eventually. So for a couple of newspapers I accepted to make some drawings, but I didn't want at all to tackle that topic in a humorous way. I would never do something like that, especially at that particular moment. We were all riding that emotional wave, and this probably
colpito molto anche me.
impressed us
Niels,
a
did
lot.
you draw
Niels,
any cartoons
anche
after
tu hai
Charlie
fatto
Hebdo?
dei fumetti dopo Charlie Hebdo, delle
Did you
vignette?
make any cartoons
E
after Charlie Hebdo?
hai fatto dei fumetti dopo Charlie Hebdo?
Why?
Sì, li ho fatti.
Because I
Perché?
was, very,
Perché ero colpito emotivamente da quello che era accaduto, conoscevo molte delle vittime personalmente e quindi ero
and after a while very, very angry because it was normal people doing their jobs, and it was such intrusion into our freedom and our personal life. Suddenly it got very personal. So I felt I had, it came very natural for me to do something about it. So that's why I did.
I have a question to all of you, and that is in respect of Charlie Hebdo. Have you ever been self-censoring yourself? You draw something and then you said, oh, no, 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 no. For whatever reason, I'm not going to show it. And if that's so, have you ever, and why?
Ogni giorno? No, nel senso...
every day? No. Well, that's very interesting because
Diciamo, quando ti viene in mente qualcosa,
when you have something in mind, you bear something in
cosa
mind.
succede?
What happens then? Then you feel in the shoes of those who are going to read that. It happens. Not all people have got the same sensitivity. What seems light to me might seem very serious to other people.
Cosa facciamo?
So what do we do?
Personalmente,
Personally,
se
if
ci tengo,
What?
perché è una cosa che mi sta a cuore, la
if it's
faccio.
something that seems very worth it to me, I do it. And I do not think of those who are going to read it because it is a need I feel inside myself, that is to put something onto paper.
Devo essere sincero, mi è successo
To be
qualche
honest,
volta con
it
dei
happened
giornali,
to me
invece.
with some newspapers instead.
Giornali, dipende anche qui,
Well, on
parliamo di
newspapers,
giornali, però,
we are referring
anche
to
qui
newspapers and
parliamo
magazines, but
specifico.
you should be more
Ovvero sia,
specific.
un giornale di satira è una cosa,
A
un
satire
giornale di informazione
magazine
è
is
un'altra
something
cosa.
and an
Quindi,
information newspaper
nei
is
giornali
something
di
else.
satira,
So in
e
satire,
soprattutto ultimamente anche
magazines
tutte
and
quelle riviste
lately
online,
in
quei
many
siti
online
dedicati
magazines
a
and
satira, lì non mi
websites
sono
on
mai fatto
satire.
problemi,
I have
perché
never had
rispondo
problems
io
for
direttamente
those
quello che
because
faccio.
I am
Questa è
directly
una cosa per me molto importante, la
responsible for what I
responsabilità.
do.
Se
Responsibility
io
plays
voglio
a
dire
major
una cosa
role.
su
If I want to say
qualcuno, lo
something on
faccio
somebody, I do it
direttamente.
directly.
Se invece uso un
If,
palco che
on
non
the
è
contrary,
mio,
I use a
che è quello del
stage which
giornale,
is not
se il
mine,
giornale
that
la
is a
rifiuta,
newspaper stage, if a
il motivo è
newspaper
perché la rifiuta,
rejects it and gives me the
ci sta.
motivation, it's
Se invece
okay
il
for me.
giornale la prende
If
e
the
poi non la
newspaper
pubblica,
takes it and
lì
it doesn't
cambiano un po' le
publish it,
cose,
then things would
perché
change for
comunque,
me, because anyway,
la censura
censorship
viene da parte di questo giornale.
is
Mi è
applied
capitato 2
by
volte,
this newspaper. It happened to me twice.
tante, devo
Not so many, to be
quelle 2
honest,
volte
but
lì era veramente
those
per
2
questioni di
times it was due to a question of
equilibri
balance,
interni
internal
che
balances.
di cui non voglio neanche entrare
I'm
nel
not
merito,
going
però
to get into further
capite che
details, but
c'è
anyway,
sempre qualcuno
there is always somebody
che
who
valuta le tue cose e può decidere se
selects
farle passare o meno.
your things and can
Detto
decide
questo,
whether they should pass or not.
La censura esiste.
Censorship does exist, and self-censorship, well, we decide where, when we should apply it.
In questi giorni
Because over the last few days,
la faccio più semplice, scusate,
well, to
perché
say it simpler,
voglio essere un po' più
I want
spiccio.
to be
Questi giorni siamo
simpler.
stati bombardati,
Over the last few
anzi,
days, we
ormai
were bombed
probabilmente non lo siamo neanche più, da alcune immagini
by some
molto
images that were
potenti
really
su
powerful
questa crisi
on this
migratoria. E c'è un'immagine in particolare
migration
che ha riempito i
crisis, and there is an
giornali,
image in
ha
particular
riempito i
that
siti
filled up
internet.
newspapers,
Siamo
in
di fronte, vorrei fare un
websites,
discorso di questo tipo, siamo di
and
fronte
we are
a
facing
un uso, quasi un abuso
a
dell'immagine.
use or a misuse
Cioè, io
of
quell'immagine
images. That
Non ho
image,
potuto scegliere
I
se
couldn't
guardarlo o
choose
meno.
whether to look at that image or not. I
L'ho vista perché
saw
mia
it
cugina l'ha pubblicata
because my
su
cousin
social
published
network.
it on a
L'ho vista
social
perché
network.
degli
I
amici
saw
l'hanno
it because
fatto,
some
l'ho vista perché degli
friends
sconosciuti
published
l'hanno
it, some
fatto.
unknown
E l'ho
people
visto
did it.
perché i social network
And I saw it because
me la
social
mi
networks
facevano partire il video in automatico di questa cosa.
let a video
Allora,
start
torno al
automatically on
discorso della
that.
scelta.
So getting back to the choice, to the issue of choice, to Charlie Hebdo, that's an issue of freedom. Freedom means choosing whether I should see something or not. Charlie Hebdo, out of choice, hadn't got a Facebook page or a website on the internet. You had to spend €3 and buy it. When some sketches, cartoons were published, the media took advantage of that. So, well, we couldn't say that, but they can do that because they draw images, so we show these images to you. In some parts of the world, they would never discover these images if newspaper had not published them. If I do something on my website and you know the type of things I publish, you have a look at it, you like it or dislike it, and you go away. But after the massacre, what is happening? They say, no, this is not satire, this is not humorism, the humorism should not be applied to these topics. Who decide what is right or what is wrong? Who decide what I should laugh at or not? Or you? Can you decide that something makes you laugh or not? That's it. That's freedom of choice. Responsibility is that one day I don't make you laugh. Well, okay, don't read my works, don't have a look at my cartoons. I cannot work properly every day, but if you don't like it, don't look at it. You just turn the page. The crazy thing is that something should not be published. Oh, this should be handled with a weapon. So that's foolish. Freedom means freedom of choice on every topic. Neither a government or a religion or a religious sect or a group of bakers is allowed to decide what I should laugh at or not. Personally, I had the problems of self-censorship very seldom. Due to a simple reason, I do not define myself as an aggressive cartoonist. I never use too much aggression. I don't like doing that or seeing that. And I totally agree with Marco. As far as freedom is concerned, he has clearly explained that each one of us has got his or her style or way of telling stories or things to be told. I have not the trend, I'm not happy to give answers, definitive answers, and I don't like to receive definitive answers. Normally, I'm more interested in the seed than in the tree. I teach illustration, have been teaching illustration for a long time, and I try to convey something to my pupils, and in that case, I tend not to tell everything. I'd like that people make an effort to go beyond, to go on, starting from an inspiration. It could be successful or not, but that's the way how I interpret things. My sketches have seldom put me in a situation to say, no, this is too much, I won't publish that. Normally, I use less aggressive forms of style. Ho una libertà completa in quello che faccio sui giornali, talvolta esprimo dei contenuti che magari il giornale non riesce a cogliere, ma non ci sono problemi per questo. Penso che siamo diversi fumettisti sullo stesso giornale, tutti noi siamo diversi e la gente conosce tutti i pro e i contro di ciascuno di noi e quindi siamo accettati per le persone che siamo e penso che tutti quelli che ti vedono sa cosa aspettarsi da te in qualche maniera. ma è anche una ricompensa personale per te il fatto di disegnare. Qual è la tua gratificazione? È una gratificazione il fatto di poter disegnare? Sì, è una grande cosa quella di poter dire la propria opinione a molte migliaia di persone ogni giorno, e riuscire a porsi in relazione con gli altri e sapere che tutti gli altri sanno quello che io penso su un qualcosa, o si chiedono cose
it's a reward in itself. I can only say that it's a great thing.
Ma sì, diciamo che mi è venuta in mente una cosa che penso calzi.
I am thinking something that could be interesting for that. Once a friend told me if they censor you, it means they have caught you. That is a nice definition. Sometimes you've got your own languages and schemes, and the reader is a thinking being, so he can decrypt your kind of humorism, the kind of language you use, and then they can like you or not. But that aspect is interesting. Well, the fact that our opinions are conveyed to many people. Well, lately I receive lots of even unrequested opinions. Due to this mass of voices that was created lately, you listen to lots of opinions, and you can hardly distinguish real opinions for those who are not real thoughts. Once, maybe it was a privilege, this was a sort of privilege, because there were specific tools so that your voice could be heard. Newspapers, television. Now things have a bit changed with the creation of new tools, new means. There's a sort of background noise and less thunders than you used to hear once in the past. For example, we all remember some sketches. There are some of them which marked our training, our thought. For example, sketches made on occasions such as divorce in Italy. There are some images which are a symbol in the world of satire. Now it is harder to be able to identify some sketches because there are so many more than in the past. So the ratio and the burden has changed between those who speak and those who listen to. We are all speaking now, and paraphrasing Andy Warhol, now it's easier to have a quarter of an hour of privacy than of celebrity. So it's more difficult for me to make a distinction. Now and then it's good to reflect, to meditate before speaking and before sketching, before drawing as well. And now I'd like to introduce
di qualcuno che sta usando le vignette, particolarmente a livello istituzionale, perché io lavoro per la Commissione Europea e utilizzo moltissimo le vignette.
Sketches a lot to make political information. Why? Well, because I've been studying the story of satire a lot. I was really I read Harakiri before reading Charlie Hebdo. So you had a look at these images which are screened here. And in a world that is running very fast, you can convey a message of meditation through a sketch. That's why I publish them on our Facebook or Twitter websites. Instead of publishing an article, I prefer to publish a sketch such as the one of Yves, which is being screened right now, because it simulates a thought in those who are looking at it. First of all, it makes you laugh, then irony leads to meditation, to thinking. So it's interesting to stimulate thinking, although it might be criticism against the policies adopted by my institutions or other European institutions, but this meditation, this thinking could lead to a sort of thinking by the citizens. Citizens could think, what could I do? What am I supposed to do to go against what has been submitted by this drawer, by this artist? Should I apply some censorship on what I do or publish? Well, every year I organize a contest of satire on the website of the European Union, and many works are submitted by sketchers. And what is my responsibility in the choice of the sketches I propose for the contest? I ask drawers to make a choice of 2 or 3 sketches, and then I have to make a further selection on those to decide which one should be in the contest and submit it to the public. And it is very difficult because you are responsible for that. It is my responsibility vis-à-vis my institution that rewards me, pays me to talk about Europe and not to make criticism. I use criticism to speak about the Union, so it's a very complex issue. How can we get out of it? I ask some cartoonists, such as Marcus, who is a member of the jury, I asked them to help me to make a selection according to criteria of consistency, of quality of the drawings. So we want professional drawers, and these drawings should have been published on a newspaper or magazine, both online or on paper, on TV. And there is a selection which is not censorship. It is a selection. If you visit the Facebook website of Internazionale, where you can still vote for the sketches in contest this year, there are some very hard sketches. So let's get back to our main topic, that is relationship between politics and sketches and cartoons. Well, in my opinion, a sketch has always been from the ancient Greeks and even before. We have no evidence of that, but since the ancient Greeks, it has always been a means to stimulate, to spur a reaction by the audience, a political reaction in the meaning of polis, the life of a city. So the role of sketchers, although they say they do not belong to a political party, well, they are politicians. They make politics. They make a sort of political speech. Yes, we are not politicians. I'm not an economist, but I go shopping at the supermarket. Of course. Have you any idea about the 60% of your GDP? Yes, that's why I cut my beard before coming here. Otherwise, the GDP could be altered by that. Anyway, I wanted to refer to what you said about satire as criticism towards society, which is deeply rooted in ancient Greece. But satire is a moment of catharsis, purification. At that very moment, those who are listening know that I am making a show, a sketch, or something satirical. That's important for the issue of choosing. You shouldn't come to a satirical show if you don't want to. You shouldn't look at a sketch if you don't want to. You should know what you are looking at. What happened? Sorry if I am always so social, so to say, but it helps me understanding the real topic. But maybe you can ask questions if you've got doubts. What happens? Well, Lately, recently, I'm referring to Italy, so Danish people should not feel offended. What happened? A certain way of making politics has become a sort of parody, almost satire on its turn. So what is my approach towards a crazy declaration by one of our political representatives? How can I face this humorism to this sort of trivial form of humorism? Because maybe you can tell me you're not so good at it, you should do that. But the concept is that some people are associated to monkeys. Well, we are at another level. This is not his job, he's doing my job. And I've never compared anybody to a monkey, but anyway, the Joker went to the power, went to the throne, the jolly Joker. And what happens then? For us who have to tell this ironically, it has become very hard, for me at least, because reality has overwhelmed satire.
It's not by chance that many satirical authors, not necessarily cartoonists, but performers or of theater, well, they have had to do some serious monologues because they are so overwhelming. I mean, this satire is so overwhelming. All this kind of humor, of cheap humor, is so unbearable that sometimes it also justifies, well, sometimes during TV shows, we have also heard from some politicians this kind of argument. They say, but at the end of the day, it is just satire. So they use the words, and according to their needs, they empty or they fill the words to their benefit. For example, during the Charlie Hebdo days, many of our members of parliament have expressed their sympathy immediately. Then they have seen the rest of the production of Charlie Hebdo, and they were, in their words, horrified. So where is the truth? So you like satire, provided that it responds to your feelings, and you dislike satire because you don't share the message of a specific cartoon. Well, in this case, there is a problem because maybe you have seen the wrong cartoon, or someone is using you for other aims. Just to make some examples, there are many materials around that are falsified, so say they are fake, that are great authors that are completely emptied of their contents and filled with other contents. So we are at a point that anyone can afford the luxury of taking an art, an artistic expression, and completely deprive this form of art of its nature. Well, the problem is with the definition, in my view. So maybe if one uses a joke, well, one could say this is a bad joke, but we can speak about this as a bad joke or a sub-humor, as to say. So also in this case, these two things are completely different. Humorism and humor is completely different from satire. They share something, tools and language, of course. I also think that many satirical authors of whom we can say they are authors of satire, well, they too abuse of satire themselves. Maybe I myself abuse of satire. Well, I think this is a language that has more and more deteriorated. Well, I'm speaking about Italy. I don't know if the situation is also the same in Denmark or in Hungary or in Poland. Well, I can tell you that the use of language has a lot deteriorated in Italy, and also the level of humor of comedians, so to say, has deteriorated.
Si utilizza lo stesso linguaggio e l'imbarazzo di cui tu parli.
So, the embarrassment you're mentioning, how to approach a serious topics with that kind of language that is not a very high-level language, but is the language that I'm supposed to utilize. Well, for me, the problem is a relative problem, because it is not necessarily true that satire has to make people laugh. Well, in my view, it is not the real and only aim. Well, of course, I want my audience to be laughing, but I want also them to start a certain kind of reasoning. A parte la distinzione tra umorismo e satira, credo che sia molto importante ricordare che le immagini sono molto forti e che colpiscono l'opinione e talvolta vengono non usati bene o abusati dalle persone a loro beneficio, proprio perché sono forti. E credo che questo avvenga un po', o sia avvenuto a tutti noi. Bisogna essere molto cauti. Sì, bisogna essere molto cauti. Questo vuol dire che non sei mai sempre stato cauto?
Talking about now was about other people using us, as we are sometimes being used described as the sharp end of the stick in a cultural battle that perhaps is not our battle, but suddenly our images are being used to political purposes that are not ours.
A simple question: have you ever been abused this way? Your work has been abused this way?
Things have been used by people who have not been authorized to use them. Yes.
Okay. If you allow, there are questions from the floor. Yeah, two actually. How do we do that? Perhaps we can use the other mic.
Allora vorrei chiedere un po', quel fatidico giovedì praticamente del dicembre del 2005, quando praticamente lo Jutland Post, il giovedì c'era l'inserto Avis Magaziner, praticamente con la sua sezione, c'era la sezione comunque
that is entitled Culture Weekend. And there was a deep analysis of culture that is often in relation to politics and to international events. This was a supplement that was published with this magazine on Thursday, and in this supplement there was this satire cartoon that represented Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, with a bomb on the head. Now, I would like to understand this kind of cartoon, the chief editor that's allowed to publish this cartoon, when in Denmark there are 18 ethnic groups and there are Muslims everywhere, perfectly integrated in the Danish culture. How was it possible to publish such a cartoon that was a very strong picture, and actually the Jutland Post NIELS was criticized for having abused of the freedom of speech on that occasion, with all the implications. How an editor-in-chief could allow to publish a cartoon that is not there just to make people laugh. It is not satire, it is not humorism. Well, according to my modest opinion, I've lived in Denmark for 2 years, but in my view, that cartoon was not a matter of humor, it was not a matter of satire. Well, maybe it was published to a little bit block a phenomenon of immigration into Denmark, and the government maybe wanted a little bit to block, because Denmark has given so much in terms of immigration, of receiving immigrants.
Thank you.
Grazie.
From Hungary, a free speech scholar and free speech advocate. My question is that it was mentioned several times in this conversation and came up 2 days ago in the panel on free speech, that cartoons and critical speech in general often aim at power, those in power or institutions of power. But you said that for you, it doesn't matter what's the subject if you want to, if it comes to you to ridicule, mock whatever group, then you claim the freedom. And I sort of agree with it, but I have a big question mark. I raised it 2 days ago as well. Don't you differentiate if it comes to mocking power or mocking people who belong to discriminated against groups? Or in what ways? Of course, I can imagine that with your artistic freedom, you approach the subject, of course, in a different way. If you mock or do satire about a powerful person or on Roma school children who's in segregated school, or you don't, or it doesn't come to you at all to do a cartoon on a segregated Roma school children. But isn't it the case that still there is differentiation, and when it comes to people who are discriminated against, then you may just be with some, you may be more careful and may either engage in some sort of meaningful self-restraint that may not be or should not be characterized as self-censorship, while if you criticize those who are in power, you don't do the same thing. And then it comes to the Mohammed cartoon thing as well. This is the last sentence and I finish. That we were talking about it with Thierry yesterday morning at breakfast, whether we can differentiate saying that if someone is mocking religion or the powerful institutions of the religion or the power of the religion, then it's aiming at power, even if many followers of that religion feel personally attacked. But if, let's say, it's mocking a Muslim refugee in a desperate situation, that is not aiming at power. So it's just an illustration, and so this is my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll add just one point to that. Also, at what stage, if you haven't done so already, would you also laugh at Charlie Hebdo tragedy? Would you make a satire of that?
Maybe Niels could answer the Danish problem, and I would like to make a comment on this also.
I can only say that I quite agree with. I've felt the same thing about the Muhammad drawings in 2005, which is why I didn't want to do it, because it was, to me, it was an empty provocation. But of course, he was in his full right. The editor was in his full right to do it. I mean, it's freedom of speech. I don't agree, so I just. But I accept that it's his opinion.
Su questo problema di sapere se qualcosa...
Well, on this problem of knowing if something is making you laugh or not, well, this is very personal. My sense of humor cannot be identical to yours. So the problem is that of knowing, as Peter also said, if we want to know, if we want through a cartoon target people or target power. These are completely different things. So on that specific fact, also in my case, I did not like these cartoons. I also did not appreciate that Charlie Hebdo republished it, well, because it has completely unleashed the anger of other people. So I add to what NIELS and Solberg-Boyesen has said. There is a freedom of speech. I mean, if a right newspaper or magazine wants to publish something, or if a political party wants to publish something, and this is not a first personal offense or doesn't result in a damage, well, then why not? If then people do not want to read this, well, this is their choice. I would like to add a couple of things in trying to give an answer to the question. Well, there is a free speech, but there is also hate speech. Well, I personally am in favor of hate speech because the most visible hatred is the best it is, because we can combat hatred. If racism were invisible, if repression were invisible, well, in this case, we would would not see them. It would be underneath. If something is visible, I can combat, I can struggle. And satire, like information, has this power, the power of the word, of the speech, of the picture, of the image. Those who are not able to use these powers, well, they use weapons, they use violence. So to me, satire, this way of looking at things, of conceiving things, designing them, transforming things, well, for me, it is a sign of transformation of violence. My violence becomes only verbal. I and you, we confront ourselves only with ideas. I think this is the aim of satire. If I hadn't met satire, if I hadn't started laughing, even of myself, because I'm not that serious person I can seem now, well, this is a very strong form of self-criticism, because I can laugh of everything. It is an exercise of transformation, of catharsis, a cathartic exercise. This is very important to me, because before we were mentioning what is the difference between making a satire on a Roma pupil and the god of a religion. Well, the difference is in the end, in the aim, what you want to hit. If you want to hit a Roma pupil, because he's a Roma pupil, you are making a racist operation, and period, because words define things. If I make a satire on a religion, it is because I do not believe, period. I am not against those who believe in these things. I am against their image. It is a kind of dialectics that has other tools like parody, like paradox. So it works like this. It is a cultural operation. It is essentially a cultural operation. It is a cultural operation, and this means that I and you, we can confront ourselves on this without violence. So we face in a different manner a topic. After that, well, as I was mentioning before, there are some people, some individuals that use these things as tools against some given groups. And here is the difference. Charlie Hebdo, well, seemed when the act of terrorism happened, well, it seemed that they only dealt with Islam, with Muslims, but it was not like that when they have discovered that it was not so. Well, the public opinion has also changed. So it was at a time when there was a very high tension in France, but Charlie Hebdo has been dealing with Jews, Christians, about Front National, of society of families. Well, but also in this case, they took what was useful, they use it to their ends, which is not honest. Now, very briefly, on the Mohammed cartoon, well, I think that an editor-in-chief has the right, must have the right to publish whatever he or she deems to be appropriate. Well, I personally dislike that kind of cartoons, and I dislike also this kind of satire, but it's my personal taste. But I think that you all agree that it's absolutely necessary for editors to be allowed to publish whatever they want to publish according to their sensitivity. Well, I have another request, a video request. I put 2 cartoons in the selections that I made. Oh, well, it is not possible. Well, this is censorship. So I'm leaving now. So I had selected 2 cartoons, and they were supposed to be projected. Well, I can't remember the title now. Maybe one Yalta and the other one Creazione, creation.
Ce n'è una in bianco e nero che sembra
There is one black and white that seems Yalta. In the place of Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt, there are 3 other personalities, black and white, very beautiful, very, very beautiful. You can find it? Well, rather strange. It is the most beautiful. Well, and what about creation, like the creation by Michelangelo?
L'ho vista io. Quella della creazione c'era.
Non è questa.
It is not this one.
Aspetta. Comunque no, era per spiegare.
Well, it was. Well, I'm driving. Maybe the translator crazy.
Come? Sarebbe una bella idea, ma sto comodo qui. Ho imparato che quando prendo una poltrona in Italia è meglio che stessi seduti.
I don't want to stand up. I prefer to stay this comfortable armchair. Well, these cartoons have been made for a contest of cartoons on religion. It was in Denmark, if I'm not right. So the request was, let's treat religion in a humoristic manner. So the topic was very wide, religion. So I produced these 2 works. Where there is Mohammed represented.
Era per farvi vedere come l'avevo raffigurato io.
It was just to show you how I drew Maometto Mohammed. This is creation.
Sì, è mia sempre.
It is my cartoon, very, very beautiful, because I won the contest last year with this cartoon.
No. Ce l'avevi prima, torna indietro, eccola qua.
Backward,
Non so
please.
se la vedete bene.
I don't know if you see it.
Ecco, questa è una visione di
Well, this is
della creazione.
A portrait of creation, a depiction of creation,
Siamo abituati a vedere
a possible creation.
Dio che genera Adamo, e qui ci
So
sono
we
un po'
are
tutti i
used to
rappresentanti di
see
diverse
God that
religioni.
generates Adam,
Perché tutti
and here you see
hanno
all the
inventato
representatives
l'uomo.
of
Quindi
the
io
different
dico, ci devono
religions
stare
because
tutti.
they have all
E
invented
c'è
man.
Ganesh, il dio
So there
indiano,
is Ganesh,
elefante,
the
poi
Indian
c'è
god,
Bacco,
the elephant, there is
un drago
Bacchus,
giapponese, c'è
there is a Japanese
c'è di tutto, c'è
dragoon,
Buddha,
there
c'è
is
anche
Buddha,
Maometto.
and there is
Maometto
also
lo
Muhammad.
raffigurato come
And Muhammad is
nell'iconografia
represented
tardo-medievale,
like in the
veniva
late
rappresentato,
medieval
cioè non si poteva
iconography,
disegnare, e quindi gli mettevano
so
un
it
panno
was not
davanti alla
possible
faccia.
to draw Muhammad,
una
so
cosa
they
anche
put a drap,
danno
a
i sacchetti
linen,
quando ti vergogni.
a linen
Poi c'è
on the
l'altra Yalta
face
invece,
of Muhammad. Then there is the other one,
se
Yalta.
la trovi,
If
giusto per
you
vedere
succeed in
anche
finding this cartoon, just to
disegni.
give you an idea of these two
scusate, nel
cartoons.
frattempo tiro una micetta. La micetta. Cioè, no, questa no.
No, it is not this one.
Eccola! Funzionato, vedi? Basta farvi prendere paura.
Well, it worked.
Ecco, questa è una vignetta che evoca
This is a
Yalta,
cartoon
cioè dopo,
about
non sto parlando
Yalta.
di storia su
Yalta.
che non ha senso.
Well,
Però
I'm not making a lecture
c'erano
of
tre
history on
vincitori. Qui
Yalta.
ci
There
sono tre
were the three
rappresentanti delle
winners.
principali
Here are the
religioni.
three representatives of the
E
three main
Il
religions.
fatto di averli fatti insieme
Well,
lì
the fact that
voleva giocare proprio su
they are
questo
there
argomento, cioè
is
dopo,
just
cioè, dopo una guerra è bene un attimino,
to mean that
però
after a
l'intento
war,
satirico, o almeno la lettura che ci ho dato io
well,
a questa è: ma dopo Yalta cosa è successo?
maybe
C'è
it
stata la
was the
guerra
right
fredda.
place for them, but my
Quindi,
satire
per
was
tornare al discorso che
this one. After
queste sono le
Yalta, what
sovraletture che io
happened? There was the
intendo
Cold
mettere nei miei
War.
lavori, cioè dare
So
sì
this
un'opinione,
is
però
what
anche andare un attimino oltre.
the messages I
Basta,
want to
finito,
put
ho
into my
monopolizzato
works,
tutto, basta.
to give my opinion, but also to go beyond my opinion.
L'abbiamo esaurita la prima.
Sul fatto che tu facevi delle vignette per criticare un potere.
So the rest of the questions, well, the question was about the fact of making cartoons to criticize power.
Una cosa perché
Well, they are trying to summarize the question because they don't remember the question. Well, very often satire is associated, the idea of satire is associated to the idea of an attack, but it is not only that. I have to say that from my point of view, well, it is also expedient to, let's say, educate from the bottom. I mean, to consider the man in the street, so to say, the average man, the average citizen, and consider what the average man makes during the day, how he or she behaves, how he or she develops his thinking. Well, probably I'm not very skillful. I'm not interested in targeting a final target. I'm more interested in the path traveled for that, for arriving to that behavior. So now, well, actually, not to be too simplistic, but the responsibility is on every one of us, also in our daily behaviors and attitudes. I think that assault satire is very important, but I think that at the same time it is also important to consider as satire something that considers is the step before. I would like to extend the apologies on part of Wojciech. He has had to left because he has to catch a flight. There is one last question on the part of the audience to our panelists. If so, please come here. I would like to know if, in your opinion, there is an ideal nation or country where to make satire. Do you think there is a difference between Italy and other countries in the world? Have you already been thinking about this? Maybe it is not that important for you. Well, do you think there are different characteristics between the situation in Italy and in other countries?
I will ask first to Niels to answer to that.
Vorrei chiedere a Niels di dare una risposta. Credo che ci sia una decisione, ma non è tra l'Italia e il resto del mondo. In tutti gli altri paesi ci sono voci diverse, diverse tradizioni, diverso linguaggio nell'uso di queste immagini e quindi è proprio per questo che c'è una differenza nel pericolo di essere fraintesi, perché utilizziamo dei diversi simboli nelle diverse lingue. Well, I don't think there is an ideal country, a sort of heaven for satire. Maybe Conversano starting from this evening, but I don't think if there is an ideal place. Well, I can't remember now the best example, the worst examples. There are so many. There are countries where drawing a religious representative just with the football beneath his foot. Well, if you do this, you are put in a jail. Well, this is the measure of freedom that is given by the circumstances. There are authors that have been heavily injured for some drawings, and well, these drawings seen by Westerners. Well, of course, they do not hurt at all Westerners. Well, I'm here in Italy. I essentially work in Italy and deal with the Italian situation, and then I also deal with the rest. But when all the languages draw on a culture, and I think that very often an author must be linked to that culture, to the ways of saying of that country, with the history of that country, and this for being understood by the vast majority of people. For example, many of the things that were made in France, well, we didn't understood, but French people understood this very well. Where there is a universal satire or macro themes, liberty, anti-racism, there are many universal themes: water, earth, economy, euro. Well, euro only Europe. But then there are topics of internal politics, and you must be aware of these themes. You must get deep into them and give your judgment. Well, and the lady who posed the question, she's here. She still is here. I have no idea at all of any ideal country where to make satire. Well, Padania, the Po Valley region, maybe is the ideal place where to make satire. And also Atlantide, Atlas, maybe.
Tornando a quello che dicevi sulle difficoltà che incontrano le autrici
well, in terms of the challenges of satire authors in countries where there is limited freedom, also in that case, the context maybe generates a higher level of courage compared to our levels of courage. But
frankamente io mi
frankly
sento piuttosto
speaking,
comodo, no?
I feel very comfortable
più o
here,
meno tutti in qualche modo.
as most of us
magari sarei stato più
somehow
aggressivo
feel
altrove.
comfortable.
Probabilmente
Maybe
avrei
I
sentito
would have been more aggressive elsewhere. I would have felt the need to report, to denounce,
perché è ovvio che
more
una vignetta come quella
than
di cui
leading
parlavi,
people,
del pallone da calcio
having
ha
people
un'incidenza
thinking
assolutamente
about
diversa
this, because
sia
the
nell'azione
cartoon,
repressiva che
as
viene fatta
the
nei
one
confronti
you
dell'autore,
mentioned
ma sia effettivamente
before,
nella visibilità che è un
with
problema,
the
insomma, per cui
football
il gesto dell'autore satirico in quel caso
beneath
assume
the
un'importanza
food has
assolutamente più grande di quella
completely
che può avere
different
qui,
reaction.
insomma, senza far paragoni di
And not
carattere
only in
religioso,
terms of
insomma,
the
no?
repressive
Ne parlavamo poi
actions,
prima di venire qua, insomma, no? Che,
without making
ci sentiamo più o meno
religious
tutti in qualche
comparisons,
modo liberi di affrontare il tema
we
religioso legato
here
al cattolicesimo in modo anche
we feel
provocatorio, anche
ourselves
canzonatorio, a volte anche in
free
modo
to
assolutamente
face
sacrante,
or to make satire also
non temiamo in qualche modo
against the
nessun tipo di
Catholic Church. We do not fear any kind of retaliation.
per adesso.
Vendita armi.
Well, until now, at least, well, I live very close to the Swiss guards. Well, a very last thing.
Spero bene per
So,
voi che ci avete ascoltato.
I would like to add,
l'ultima differenza
well,
che vorrei lasciarvi con questa riflessione.
and I would like to leave you with this reflection.
Funziona
well, satire works
quando
when
il calcio viene dato dal basso,
the kick is given from the bottom.
quando il calcio arriva dall'alto,
when the kick comes from
basso,
from the
non è
upper part and goes to the bottom, this is not satire.
Penso effettivamente che questa è
And I think this is an excellent conclusion to this debate, because satire, the role of satire, the caricature targeted to the power, it is targeted to the up, not to the bottom. So I would like to thank all the panelists, I would like also to thank all of you, and I would like to thank the interpreter, the interpreter for the translation. Thank you.